Hello, I'm Dale Tuttle. I'm a partner at Withum, Smith& Brown, and we're here to talk a little bit about hybrid workplace and some of the technology considerations, the responsibilities even, for how this is implemented, how people should work within it, and just kind of give some background on kind of where we're going, and what some of those considerations for planning and being a successful deliverer of hybrid services, but also consuming them, because there's responsibilities on both ends actually. So once I get this to work, we'll broke it out into kind of three areas. Defining what hybrid work is. It's not terribly complicated, but also, as you'll see in a minute, not terribly new either. We want to talk and spend a considerable amount of time of our 25 minutes understanding the challenges and stakeholder responsibilities, then talk a little bit more about solutions that make your life easier in a hybrid solution or environment, I should say. So, you always have to start out with a definition, and hybrid work pretty much means supporting people who are working from home in an office location. But what's interesting now is that people can switch between these locations, and a lot of times in the same day. I've done that already today. I was on my home network this morning, then I come into the office to do this and meet with some other people. So I was shifting from different networks and from my remote location to my on-site location all in one day. And by the way, in a little while, I'll be heading back to my home office. But this is the norm now. When people it's not one day here, one day there necessarily. It's kind of like this seamless integration between being off premises and then on office location. So that's really the hybrid scenario. It's not really new. We've been doing this for a long time, but what's changed are the technologies and just how many people are doing it, and that has imposed a dramatic amount of change on both IT people, but also people like me, like us, working from these various locations. So let's dive into it a little bit more. So as I said a minute ago, hybrid work isn't new. We've been doing this for a long time. Now, as I said a second ago, what's changed is the scale. That's how many people are doing it at the same time. Yes, it is driven by the pandemic. And what else has changed is there's just new ways to deliver your remote experience. Technologies are changing very fast, both good and bad technologies. We'll dive into that in just a second. But when you think about it, VPN, virtual private networks and desktop virtualization, this has been in use for years. People have been doing this for years. So it's not necessarily new. But honestly, what happened, well, I guess over a year and a half ago now, if you can believe it, is that all of a sudden we had to rapidly change. And this imposed a lot of stress, mostly on IT folks providing those services, but also, it was stressful for just people trying to get their work done, because it didn't necessarily for every firm go that well. It went really well for Withum because we did a lot of it anyway, and we're big enough to have a great internal IT shop, and our external consultants, if they needed help, were there to assist, because we provide these services to external stakeholders as well. But when you think about these old ways of doing hybrid work, they came with a lot of baggage. Usually they impose some sort of performance penalty, required specialized tools, applications. You have to load up your VPN tool, and then it would block out everything else. And there's a lot of times performance issues because the VPN could only handle so many connections. So these types of things made it okay for small amounts of people or numbers of people connecting at any given time, but really imposed serious challenges once the pandemic really hit and people needed to do it pretty much all the time. So let's talk a little bit about the business challenges. We're not going to just focus on the technology challenges here, but let's look at, step back a little bit and think about this from a business perspective. Now, first of all, it's here to stay. There's not going to be a rush back to the office, not only because of things like the Delta variant that are out there and the subsequent variants that will come, but what's happened is that people like working remotely, and that has imposed a dynamic on leadership because they have to accommodate probably permanently large numbers of people not working in the office. More than that, they're going to be accommodating people moving back and forth between office locations and their home office, just like I did this morning. So there's lots of surveys out there. I have one linked at the bottom of this slide. But this is based on Microsoft surveys of their employees, which is huge. They're pushing 200,000 people, but also just other workplace surveys that are out there, and it's pretty consistent what's being found out in the workplace. About 75% of surveyed workers want a hybrid approach. It means they want to work at home, but they want that option to come into the office when they need to. However, this has come with a few penalties. It means people are more productive once you have the right tools and processes in place, but they're exhausted because you're working all the time, right? I mean, probably everybody on here watching today, I know myself included and my family, even the students in my family, everybody worked a lot. You started earlier and you kept going later with different breaks during the day for whatever responsibilities you may have, but your work day actually became longer. So people got more done, but man, they're tired. And I include myself in that. And I think I just lost my presenter mode. It's back. So flexibility, though, these surveys are finding is what people really want. They want to know that they can move between offices, stay home if they need to for their home-based responsibilities. And this is really important to workers and maybe a reason there's so much turnover in almost every industry right now. Some of the consequences, downside of hybrid work, though, again, this is based on direct contact with people experiencing hybrid work. People, while they feel more productive, they are more siloed than ever. What we're doing is we're recreating teams of people that are dislocated from each other, regardless of the technology. There's fantastic technology out there to stay in contact with your other teams. We're a Microsoft shop, so we use Office 365, really Microsoft 365 now. And we all use Teams and all the other tools that are part of the Office 365 and Microsoft 365 family. So we use those collaboration and productivity tools all the time, and that really helps us a lot. But what happens is that you feel like you feel dislocated because you don't have that social interaction. And they're found that innovation suffers. And here at Withum, actually, we have a concerted effort of not only to, when appropriate, get people back in the office, to get people working together directly when safe and conforms to local regulations. But we just think that it helps us be more creative and more innovative. But we're trying to also do that, though, in a hybrid environment because we know it's here to stay. Okay, look, let's step back now and say, if I'm an IT professional, I have to deliver a hybrid work scenario, right, to my employees, right? This is an interesting challenge. For IT staff, the worry is almost always security out of the gate. Lots of other worries too. But what's happening is that when you're working from home, you may not be on a secure network. You may not be on a work device. Most of us have multiple devices. You may log on to your email from this machine, and then you go downstairs or into another room, and oh, I forgot to do something. And there's a computer sitting there open. You log on, and you start checking your email. It's kind of the Wild West. And then a lot of us will take our device, our phone or our laptop, we'll take it to a completely public network and do something. I'm thinking, of course, a coffee shop that most of us have done from time to time. So, these types of scenarios keep IT people up at night because while they're dealing with this complex security environment, they also have to deliver tools, services, applications, capability to people from anywhere now. And that is a big IT challenge. It's a big responsibility to keep all that stuff secure and keep people happy, right? Retention is really important. You want your workers to be productive, feel like they're part of the team, engaged, and that's from an IT perspective, they have to do all that while keeping it secure. So their problem is actually pretty big. So keep that in mind. But let's think of it if you're not in the internal IT support. What do you really want? You just want to get on, log on, have seamless connection to your services and your applications, okay? You want to be able to collaborate with your colleagues. You want to be able to chat. Again, we use Microsoft Teams. We're chatting all day. We're exchanging files. We're doing all this sort of stuff. And then, we also want things on our phone because when I go out, maybe I have to take the kids to school, pick them up. When you're sitting there, you check your email, right? Or maybe you're in Teams and you're in a chat. You want all that stuff to be available to you anytime. So You want these tools on all your devices. But another thing, and we have to all admit this, sometimes we're not necessarily segregating our homework, our personal lives from our work lives. I may be on a computer for work. Maybe it's the end of the day. Something I forgot. I'm supposed to order something from Amazon or one of these other services. You just do it from a browser based on your work computer. I'm not saying I do that, of course, or any of you, but this stuff does happen. It's the real world. And so what happens is that your work device and your personal life sometimes get intertwined. It's harder to segregate things, certainly on your mobile phone, absolutely from your mobile phone. So that's a challenge. It's a challenge to you because you have responsibilities. It's a challenge because you have expectations on the IT side for all that stuff to work. But let's talk a little bit about what the technology changes are doing to all this, to make this actually both better and worse at the same time. So cloud-based tools are pretty much the norm now, right? I mentioned we have Office/Microsoft 365, Google, Amazon, Salesforce, all these things, right? We're using all these tools, both at work and, of course, for our personal lives, but they're all cloud-based for the most part. And this provides new ways to deliver services, mostly through a web browser, right? You can do almost anything you need to do through a web browser. And that's great, but you also have security concerns in that too. But that does make it a little bit easier to deliver hybrid services, right? It makes it easier for people to bring their own devices to do work if everything's browser-based. Now, so that's kind of the good, but what's the bad here? What's also happened as technology matures and gets more, both interesting and capable, the types and frequency of security threats have just proliferated at the same time. Because we're all engaging via web browsers, remote, we're on public networks, the opportunity for bad things to happen has increased dramatically. And so that's what you're trying to balance, reasonable security with capability provided to your hybrid work employees. So let's see, how do we deal with this stuff in the next few minutes? And this is where it gets kind of interesting, I think, is that if you're going to really deliver an effective hybrid solution, which means home and at work, you really need to understand what your end users need. This isn't even technology. The technology part of the equation isn't even in there yet. You're just trying to understand what your users need. For instance, if you're a public accounting firm like Withum, there are tax and audit experts that need very specialized tools, and you have to deliver those securely, obviously. So that's a consideration. But if you're doing technology consulting, like my group does, that's a different set of tools that need to be available to me and my team. But you need, from an IT perspective, that needs to be delivered to you. But you need to know what those tools are. You need to know how they're going to use it. That'll inform how things need to be secured, configured, and administered. So once you understand how to deliver those services, it's easier to figure out how to do it. So you figure out what you need to deliver to your stakeholders, and then you figure out how to do it. Fortunately, the how has become a lot easier than it used to be. So some of the questions are, do you have specialized tools that may not be cloud-based? That's honestly, in a public accounting firm, the answer may be yes. But there are a lot of firms that have very specialized applications that they may be serving to their end users from their own data center or some other remote location. But it's still pretty much an on-premises based experience. But then you need to think about how do you secure both the applications and the devices. That is the key thing. And then there's this concept of zero trust, and that's what IT people are pretty much doing now, enforcing this idea of zero trust from devices and their users. So look, the biggest thing that can happen to support your hybrid workers are simplifying your tools. You want your remote users and your on-site users to really not have to switch between experiences. I don't. My computer will go seamlessly from a home network to my work network because the same set of tools remain the same. We use Microsoft 365. We use in that platform, we use Teams extensively. Of course, I have my email running, which is all Microsoft 365. It doesn't really care where I am because we have security set up to make sure that nothing bad is going to happen, just simply based on what network that I'm on. So, your end users don't care if they're at work or at home. I don't. I just want it to work. And fortunately, our IT services make sure that's happened. That's easier to do now than ever, but we have simplified, right? Microsoft 365 is the primary cloud-based platform that we are using our productivity and collaboration apps from. So it makes it easier to secure and deliver those services because it's built to be done via the cloud. Not everybody's in the same situation as Withum. In fact, that's our job. Our job is to help you get to that environment where you can deliver hybrid services to your folks in a secure, performing fashion, right? You want things to work quickly. But when you secure the hybrid environment, it's not necessarily different from any other environment, but identity and access management become really, really important. Then information protection. That means forget about the connectivity issues. The information that people are accessing and using, that also needs to be protected. And fortunately, there are new ways to do that. Then there's threat protection. Think that really is your virus protection and your ransomware protection, that sort of stuff. Then there's specific activities around securing your endpoints, your devices, your computers, information governance, and then, how do you deal with external file sharing? These are all considerations for the hybrid environment. Well, let's talk a little bit about zero trust. You're going to hear about this. It's out there, and wow, we have principles of zero rust in there. So thank you, autocorrect, for that one. Probably shouldn't even have pointed it out. But I do like the term now. But what is it? It means you verify explicitly. This is kind of an IT nerd term, but always authenticate and use all the available data points to authenticate. So what does that mean? I authenticated this morning. I was at home. We have two-factor authentication too, by the way. When I logged on, I had to say, oh yeah, that's me, and it sent me I had to acknowledge a code that had been pushed to my phone. That same thing happened when I came back to the office. So what it did is it detected I'd changed locations. So I was trying to verify with a reasonable amount of accuracy that it's Dale trying to log on to these devices on these different networks. And then the other idea here is once you're authenticated, so in that scenario that I just painted, when I log on, only grant Dale the authority to his part of the world. I don't need access to tax and audit applications, for instance. I'm on the advisory side. I need access to advisory tools. I don't need everything. So you don't hand the keys to everything just because somebody's authenticated and prove that they are who they are. And then the other concept is the idea of an assumed breach. That means you have to assume that sooner or later, or maybe it's happening right now, somebody's on there that shouldn't be. So that means isolating what people can do. You isolate the damage. You isolate what bad things might possibly happen. And that's really dependent on number two. That's why you try to limit what people can do within their purview of their authenticated session. So you have to put a pick in. I love this pick. It's from Microsoft. It kind of gives a great idea or a visualization of kind of all the things that are involved. Managing identity, devices, understanding threats that are out there right now and detecting people that might be trying to hack in. By the way, that's happening to any large organization as we speak. People are trying to hack in. And it happens every day, almost 24/7 now. Someone's trying to do something bad. So that puts a lot of responsibility on your IT staff, but also responsibilities on us as just a consumer, if you will, of those services. So let's talk a little bit about those responsibilities in the remaining few minutes that we have. Look, on the IT side, you've got to provide all the stuff that we want securely, and it needs to work. It needs to work quickly. Our expectations are high now because we all use tools that they work great. And so you're doing work, it really should be as fast, as easy as it is if I'm just ordering something on one, on a e-commerce site. So IT staff, you got to provide all that stuff to people, and it's got to work. It's got to work fast. Now let's look at our staff responsibilities. And this is really, really important because there's more of us than there are the IT people. You need to be mindful of what you do and where you do it and on what device you're doing it. You really should try not to mix your work and your home devices, if you will. You should try to keep that separate. But regardless of what device you're on, if you're even on a work computer or your mobile phone, you have to be careful about emails, phone calls, text, because you're being bombarded. We all get these weird calls and texts, and emails a lot. The filters, all these types of things are constantly looking for these threats. The threats are changing so much that there's a lag, right? You'll get really good at stopping one type of attempt, but then of course a new one comes along, and then there might be a lag until that is fully prevented from happening at scale. So we have to be careful. And the other thing is, again, it's a state of mind. Don't assume security is all taken care of by your IT department. Don't think it's all on them. It's on you too. It's on us. Things get through. We all know it. You just have to watch the news any given day. Things get through. So don't be someone that lets something get through. We have all this great technology now. The security tools on the Microsoft 365 part are very sophisticated. Unfortunately, the people trying to create new ways to break into stuff, they're also very creative and very technically capable. And so it's this constant battle between these the good guys, us, and the bad guys. But a lot of this, by the way, are accidental. A lot of breaches are completely accidental, and so there may not be any malicious intent whatsoever, but you mistakenly open something up, and that happens. And it happens everywhere. So, but if you're an IT person, or even if you're someone that's thinking about modernizing, you're a business owner thinking about modernizing so you can do a better job at hybrid service delivery, what should you really worry about? You need a simple platform, right? And it's cloud-based. Microsoft 365, morphing the name from Office 365, really, it's the same thing. There are different subscription plans, but Microsoft 365 delivers services to any user on any device. So it's a great platform to deliver services to a hybrid workforce. It's really, I would say, the industry standard. Doesn't mean there are not other cloud-based tools out there by any means, but your foundational business tools, it's a great way to go. And it's because of those collaboration and productivity apps are wrapped with pretty advanced security that's why IT stakeholders have adopted it or recommend it be adopted. Of course, business users, you have to have Word, you have to have PowerPoint, you have to have, and increasingly Teams and all these other collaboration tools, Power BI, Power Apps, all these other great tools that come with Microsoft 365. Businesses want those things. So, and then once authenticated, if you're in that Microsoft cloud, it really doesn't care from an experience standpoint if you're at office or at home. It doesn't care, right? Teams works the way it works no matter where you're at. So that's the good news. Now, if you want to, though, you can still deliver a virtualized desktop environment using Microsoft 365. Some IT departments like to control everything about your work experience. They're going to say, here are the 10 applications, throwing that out there that you can do, and here's what you can do. And they deliver that experience in a virtualized environment. So you log on, you log into that virtualized environment, and it's delivered to you. But Microsoft 365 and Azure allows you to do that. The other great thing is you can implement zero trust with the platform, and that's very, very important. So what's next for hybrid? Where are we going? In August of this year, Microsoft did something pretty interesting. They call it Windows 365, right? So I'm using Windows 10. I think Windows 11 might be out there soon. But Windows 365, it's really a cloud PC. And why do we care? Well, in the context of hybrid work, it's actually really important. So it's a cloud PC. So now what happens, let's say you show up for your first day of work. Someone has probably asked you what kind of computer you want, and you're provisioned, and a computer's provisioned for you, and you're handed an actual device, right? I'm speaking using my own computer, right? Laptop computer. But the idea here is that the capability now is going to be in the cloud. So I will have a PC in the cloud with certain capability, certain amount of performance, about RAM and what kind of CPUs are running in the background. But I don't physically have the device. The capability is in the cloud. And from any device, including this one, I log on, and I whatever's in that experience is now on the device that I'm at. So I can go to any device, and have that experience. But the computing power is going to be in the cloud. It's almost like, for those of you who are as old as I am, remember the dumb terminals we used with Unix back in the day? It's kind of like that now. We are, oh, geez. That is it. So, however, the PC is in the cloud, so any device you can log on and get your experience. So it's very similar to what we used to do back in the day with Unix. You get on a terminal, but everything was done on the back end. So this is kind of like that now, or similar to that, I should say, where things are not where you're at. The computing power and what's happening inside, the computer doing calculations or trying to deliver graphics to you or whatever, the applications, everything is happening in the cloud and coming over to you via the internet. So what's that mean? You need really good internet. And while most of us in the business world have great internet, we don't always have it everywhere we're at. So, but it is an interesting way. I see the day coming where when you show up to work, you do not get a actual physical device any longer. They'll say, hey, use your own device, but when you log in, you're going to get your cloud PC delivered to your device. I see that coming in the future, and probably fairly soon. There's a big push for Microsoft on this whole front. So I think that's it. Thanks for this primer, if you will, on hybrid workforce and kind of all the things that go into it. Thanks very much, and let us know if you have any questions. Bye now.